Welcome to the Peer Review Workshop. This workshop will take place as part of our revision and editing process during this final week in preparation for submitting the final draft of your essay. As we get started, we want to answer a few questions with regards to peer review. First and foremost, we want to think about what is peer review. Many of us have had lots of experiences, some experiences, or even no experiences with peer review. Regardless of your experience with peer review, we want to talk about how peer review will function within the space of our particular course. One of the things I want to begin with is the understanding of what peer review is and what it can do for us as writers. When we think about peer review, it allows us to collaborate with each other. And as such, there is this collaboration between a writer and his or her audience. Peer review is also an essential part of the writing process because it allows us to collaborate with each other, provide feedback, and authentic audience response to a text that we are working on. It's also an opportunity to learn how to write for an audience. When we write in a way that makes sense for us to achieve the particular communicative goal that we need to achieve. However, without allowing for authentic audience feedback, we are uncertain of where we could revise to strengthen that communicative goal. The other part we want to keep in mind is that peer review is synergistic. You're going to provide an opportunity to give feedback to a colleague in the class, and as such, that means that you have the opportunity to read how others are bringing together their particular text for this assignment. Because we are all working on the same type of project or essay assignment, what you see are other ideas. And when you're peer reviewing, you may find something that you really like about that, or that you hadn't thought about that in the drafting process. So while you're providing feedback for their particular essay, you're also thinking about how perhaps some of the things and how they've approached it might fit in with yours. At the same time, you're going to receive feedback on your essay as well. The peer review in this course is structured so that the feedback is effective. To become an effective peer review takes practice. It means that we need to constantly be looping back into some feedback, not only with regards to the feedback that you give, but also from my particular viewpoint, let me see how we are providing feedback for others. Once you receive the feedback from your peer reviewer, you can then begin to use that feedback in any way, shape, or form that you would like in order to continue to revise and edit your own paper. So let's talk about some guidelines for peer review. We want to think about these guidelines as almost general rules. Remember I said that to become an effective peer reviewer takes a little bit of practice, and it takes intentional and purposeful practice. So as such, I want to guide you in the direction for how you want to think about peer review in this class. First and foremost, I want you to think that this is not a way that you're going to grade another colleague's draft. Grading and the final assessment of a paper is actually my job, so you don't have to worry about that. What you are doing is you're acting as a practice audience for the writer. Thinking about constantly as you go through it, is this draft doing what the writer thinks it does? Now, I will provide further guidelines on what you'll be looking for with this specific draft. So these are just some ways you want to approach peer review. I'm going to bring the second and third piece in together because they speak to similar things. First and foremost, when we provide any kind of feedback to somebody, we want to make sure that it is specific. Whether or not you write, this is good or this is needs work, either of those statements in and of themselves are not constructive because they don't define what you mean by this is good or this needs work. Instead, what you want to think about is, how can I be specific about my feedback? So if you are providing a strength for that paper, which I encourage you to do, in fact, you'll be looking for those strengths. I want you to be able to target or put exactly where you're talking about and why you are saying that. So for example, if you say, I like your introduction, but I'm unsure of how your thesis helps to frame your essay. That is very specific. So the writer then can go to that thesis, or in this case, our central point, and be able to think about how it is or isn't working in that space. Another example would be something like, you keep telling me that technology affects your life in 3 different ways, but I don't see those 3 stories in your draft. Can you tell me what you mean by that? That is a very specific comment that will guide the writer to a specific place in the essay so that they can begin to revise. Asking questions that you have as a reader is a great way to approach peer review. It's similar to when we talked about mindful reading or critical reading strategies, where you're talking to the text. Think of this as another way to engage with that process as you highlight and annotate on your author's paper in order to provide that feedback. That third one speaks to the second as well, and while praise may not always be a way to help show the writer what they need to improve on, when it is specific, it can help show them what is working in the draft. Again, either way, when we are providing constructive feedback, specificity is key to the process. And finally, I will say this: peer review is built on collaboration, respect, and collegiality. It takes 2. So you want to make sure that you are giving your partner your full attention when you are looking at their essay. There's nothing more disrespectful than giving your all to give a person feedback and having them not provide you with the same level of commitment to collaboration. So when you are setting aside that time to peer review, I want you to be in it to win it. So for this particular peer review, we want to think about a few things. We are guided in that process of reviewing a full draft of your literacy narrative. So I want you to think about talking to the text in this way. When you first get your essay that you're peer reviewing, I want you to just read the essay completely through without stopping. This allows you to get a sense of the text, and that's really important. Get to know the text you're peer reviewing. When you read through it again for the second and third and fourth time, because you will, I want you to look for the following. Frame your comments around highlighting and annotating based on these guided questions. So think about where the text describes a specific experience or specific experiences that shape the writer's development in an area of literacy. Do you see a clear controlling central point or idea and how the experience shaped the writer's development? This would be something you would look for, let's say, in the introduction. When you're looking at content, think about where the narrative techniques are coming through, right? This could include narration, dialogue. We talked about in the workshop regarding figurative language, so that idea of imagery or hyperbole, simile, metaphor. So in other words, how is the author bringing the story to life? Does it provide thoughtful, specific, and engaging analysis of what the writer learned? So as they are bringing together those experiences, are you seeing that reflective piece in there? When we think about organization, you want to think about the introduction and the title, if the title is developed yet, which it may not be. But think about the introduction. Does it engage the audience? Does it introduce the narrative's overall central point? Does the text have a purposeful structure? Are there clear transitions between the ideas? And is the conclusion effective and bring the story to a satisfying end? So as you highlight and annotate or talk to the text that you're peer reviewing, provide some comments and purposeful comments based on these questions. The final part of your peer review will be in a section called Final Thoughts. Now you can add this to the bottom of the text, you can add it to the comment section of the assignment, anywhere where you think it fits. And I want you to do three things. I want you to discuss the strengths in the text. In other words, what is working for you as an audience member in their text. The second one is to discuss some areas where you might consider further developing or adding or changing if you were the writer of this text. In other words, if this were your essay, what would you do? The third part is you're going to provide comments based on two questions that the writer has posed at the top of their text, and we're going to talk about that in a second. So the final thoughts, as you can see, is more like a summary of comments. The second part, where you're annotating and highlighting, that's providing specific areas where you see those revisions or things or questions you have for the author based on those. And as you can see, by doing this, you're going to provide that writer with some very specific but also summary of comments that are going to help guide the final revision process prior to submitting to the final draft assignment. So now we want to think about how you complete the peer review. As far as the logistics of submission, what I would like for you to do is head over to this week's module in Canvas and follow the directions for submitting to our peer review process. Make sure you attend to the due dates, as there will be two due dates, one to submit your essay and the other to then go back in and complete the peer review of the paper you've been assigned. So thank you for watching. Please come back and review this text as necessary, this video as necessary when you have questions with regards to how to complete the peer review for this week's assignments.